Oh, I said I wasn't to myself. I was like, don't clap. Don't. What's up, everybody? I hate that shit. All right, whatever. I gotta go to work soon, so I want to do this first part here, and then I'll do the rest later on. 2024 is a big year for movie anniversaries. You've got the summer of '84 anniversary coming up, arguably one of the greatest summers in movie history. But this week we're in right now is the 70th anniversary of the creature from the Black Lagoon. My favorite creature design ever. I have this mask above my fridge. The creature is designed by Millicent Patrick, and a lot of people didn't realize that for years and years and years because she was kind of scrubbed from the annals of film history by the head of Universal's makeup effects team because she was a woman, and a woman can't do this, right? So it's only more recently that people are starting to kind of realize the work that she had done on bringing, the greatest creature ever to screen. I can't say enough about how much I love this fucking creature design and this movie. Like I said, the greatest '50s monster movie ever. The last great Universal monster movie. Yes, it is essentially a remake of King Kong when you really break it down. But the thing about this movie is the creature itself, and the less we say about the sequels, the better. And that probably is why the creature from the Black Lagoon is known so well in pop culture, but not cinematically. Is the movie is not particularly strong in a lot of parts, but what is strong is really fucking strong. And the amazing thing is just the design of this fucking monster. As much as I love Monster Squad, they made the Gill Man a monster. Not what he is in this, which is, he's what if a fish was left to evolve without any interference from humans or anything like that. It looks like an animal. It breathes like an animal. Patrick's design of the suit moves so fucking well underwater, and that's one of the things that this movie really has to its, that works as a feather in its cap, is the underwater footage is just absolutely beautiful when Julie Adams is swimming above the water and the creature is swimming below. That was the inspiration that Del Toro had for The Shape of Water right there. You got Rico Browning in the suit for the underwater stuff. You've got Ben Chapman in the suit for the above water stuff. It's amazing that this thing existed in the 50s and that it worked so well. I don't know. I had the mask here and I gotta go, so I'm gonna finish this up. But I did want to show. Look. This is just a mask, but just look how beautiful the design of this thing. It's that the lure and the draw of the monster as a beautiful creature is something that's always stuck with me. And why I love the Frankenstein monster so much, and I love this simplistic design that Jack Pierce was able to give Karloff, especially in the first one where he was far more gaunt you could tell in his cheeks and stuff like that. Although Bride is my favorite of all the Universal monsters. There's something so beautiful and alluring and still frightening about monsters. And this is the one where it's about loneliness and it's about lovelorn and yes, he's a fishman monster, but he fucking falls for Julie Adams, who wouldn't in that bathing suit. And he just wants to take her away from the Rita until they show up, the humans show up to mess things up with, and we'll get into my problems with the movie and the things I love about the movie, but I just can't say enough about my just absolute love for the design of this creature and how he moves in the movie, and what a striking presence this gives. Like, you could look at this and know exactly what it is, like Dracula, like Frankenstein. And that was the brilliance of the Universal films from the 30s up until the 50s, was they struck a silhouette that you could just, you know what it is. And again, Millicent Patrick's work on designing this thing, and it's unfortunate that it took so long for her to get the respect that she deserved for her work, but she's getting it now. And you know, before that, she worked for Disney. She worked on like fucking Fantasia and stuff like that. She'd been around for a really long time working in the business. It was just a shitty dude in the 1950s who was like, well, can't have this lady taking all this credit for this beautiful monster that we're gonna make money off of for the next 70 years. So yeah, I'm so happy that they gave it this animal design. It's so natural, and it looks like it's something that could exist, and it's not too monstery or over designed. You know, even the Shape of Water was too human. The you know, anytime else they've done a Gillman type creature, they make it too much like a monster. This struck that perfect balance of, you know, functionality and design. And yeah, I love it so fucking much. So I will I'm gonna get to work. I'm gonna get some stuff done, and then I'll do the rest of this review later. But while I was here and I had a few minutes, I just wanted to gush for a minute about just how much I fucking love this creature and why it's my favorite creature design ever. And we'll get more into that as we go. All right, it's been a long work day, but we're back like I said we would, and we are talking about the creature from the Black Lagoon and its 70th birthday coming up this week. I even made myself some notes. I was sitting around and I was like, all right, what do I know about this movie off the top of my head so I don't forget it, because I rewatch my shit and I'm like, I always forget stuff that I know, and I'm like, oh, why didn't I talk about that one? All right, so the movie was directed by Jack Arnold, best known for Tarantula and The Incredibly Shrinking Man, obviously. He kind of found his place during the 50s atomic age when things were moving towards a more sci-fi vibe and away from the gothic, which was what Universal Monsters were known for. And that's what makes this one such an outlier, Creature from the Black Lagoon. Arnold was a documentarian mostly, and you could tell a lot of that in his movies, especially in Creature, because it takes on like a travelogue kind of vibe to it. If you've ever seen any of those old travelogue videos, the movie was shot in 3D. There's some wild pictures of them shooting. So they shot in the tanks in at the studio in Florida, and then they shot out in the Everglades of Florida, and they do meld pretty well together. You know, it's not as obvious as in a lot of movies when they're on a studio. The black and white of this movie really helps it too, because there is some incredibly beautiful shots of scenery and of just moodiness. I love the shots of the creature, like just below the surface or hiding. You know, there's just a lot of really cool shit in it. Obviously, it takes the Mummy and the Creature from the Black Lagoon have very similar, you know, reveals of the creature. You know, when you have your treatment of native people in this movie is progressive to a point before it trips up over its own 50s-ness. A lot of people said that this movie is racist. I've looked at it, I've seen it, not I've looked at it both ways, but I've played devil's advocate. I've seen, you know, the treatment of the Amazonian people. Okay, I can see where they're coming from. Or even the fact that the Creature from the Black Lagoon being looked at as interracial love, which I was like, I don't know about that one. I think you're kind of reaching. Like, some people just like, they get high on outrage and they go, well, I'm not a racist person. But then they find racism in everything. There's enough fucked up, racist, sexist, homophobic shit in the world. We don't need to make more, you know? But, you know, the good things that it does about, you know, the marrying, it starts off with kind of a brief summarization of evolution, where it takes religion and science and gives them both equal due. And a lot of the movie revolves around, you know, us just get, as Americans, just get, as a people, really, in that point in the 50s, just getting into the space race. And the idea of the ocean and, you know, parts of the world that were still a mystery to us, despite the fact that we have all this technological, you know, progress. Because it's funny that in, oh man, I want to say it was like 03, 04 when I was working at the comic book store, they put out a novel which like recontextualizes the creature story to say that they were like, he was like from a descendant of aliens. And it kind of reminded me of like, remember when they were saying the Ninja Turtles were going to be that they weren't mutant baby turtles, that they were part alien or some shit. But oh, the 3D, yeah, duh. So they're underwater and they had these 3D rigs with just two cameras, and you have two operators underwater who are doing it. And I got to imagine that that was a nightmare to fucking shoot, man. I can't imagine that that was an easy task for anyone. But the movie has an environmental message. I mean, it's not really subtext as much as text. Like you have Julie Adams flicks a cigarette into the water, and then we pan down, and the creature's right there. Or even like when they're underwater, and they like use a poison to like kind of ward him off and stuff like that. The movie, one of its biggest downfalls, and I it was funny. I said because Guillermo del Toro is a huge fan of this movie, as am I, and I said that the two bland white dudes who look like the same dude in Pacific Rim was his homage to this movie, because the two male leads in this, who are kind of vying for Julie Adams' affection, basically look like the same guy. And it kind of, I sometimes like, and I've seen this movie a million fucking times, I sometimes forget which dude is which. Is that Newt saying that all white people look the same? That's racist. His YouTube channel is very racist. But there, you know, there is an environmental message to this movie of like sheer fucking hubris of us as humans to go into the Black Lagoon and to start like, you know, our manifest destiny of things, and had we just left this fucking thing alone, the earth would have just kept on spinning. But you know, we had to go in and we had to create problems, and unfortunately that means that people are going to get killed, you know. And that the creature is going to lay eyes on a lady and fall in love with her. And you know, part of the thing I love so much about this movie, about most of the Universal movies, is the idea of the extremes in them, of, you know, the known and the unknown, the attractive and the repulsive. And this movie has that as a, you know, visual metaphor, when you have the water dance, basically, where she's swimming above the water and he's swimming below her, and they're, you know, their counterpoint of the beautiful and the ugly, and you know, in their own worlds, how different they're. I don't know, little things like that I think are beautiful. I again, going back to what I said in the first part of this movie is essentially Beauty and the Beast. This movie is essentially King Kong. You know, it's the idea of this thing that is foreign, is alien, falling in love with this woman. It's never seen anyone like this before, and then we come and we trample on it, and and then eventually, you know, they make two lousy sequels. It was Revenge of the Creatures Part 2, which is essentially just Jaws 3. But it has Clint Eastwood in it, his first ever movie. He's got a rat in his pocket the entire time. And then the third one is The Creature Walks Among Us, where like they give him like more of a human look to him to make him much smoother. They take away the intricate you know, designs and stuff like that. And he can breathe water, breathe air, breathe water. It's like The Abyss. But that was really just to like make it cheaper, because that's the thing about these movies, is like the first one is a touchstone, and the second and third one are kind of forgettable. You know, the second one especially is more like the male and the female lead are such pieces of shit, and the water park people, because he's basically in like SeaWorld, are such pieces of shit that like when he starts flipping cars and being all pissed off, you're like, well, yeah, fucking course he's gonna be flipping cars and being pissed off. He's a sympathetic, victim here, much like Frankenstein's monster, much like King Kong. Um, they made a terrible musical at Universal Studios. At one point, John Landis, John Carpenter, James Gunn, and Peter Jackson were all approached about directing remakes. None of them ever went forward. Um, I don't know. I just like I love this movie so much. It's such a great transitional film from the gothic, mysterious, supernatural curses angles of the 30s and 40s movies, and then because the movies at that point, like the Invisible Man had become like the invisible agent. He was working for the U.S. government during World War II, and fucking Abbott and Costello were showing up. And as much as I love the Abbott and Costello movies, because the horror was treated as horror and the comedy was treated as comedy, and they never like Marvel movied them, where it's like we have to downplay this serious moment or this scary moment to make a joke or something like that. Um, we were moving into the 50s, into the atomic age, and this felt like the natural progression of like what mystery is left, and it's the mystery of the the undiscovered country basically. And but the problem was you don't get a lot of the first movie is kind of where it stands. Everybody knows who the creature is. You know, you go Uncle Gilbert from the fucking Munsters and stuff like that. If you showed, like I said in my first part of this video, if you showed the creature to people, they know exactly who the creature is. But because the other two movies are sort of forgotten, you know, the second one was the first movie shown on Mystery Science Theater 3000 when they kicked off on Sci-Fi Channel. But those movies are kind of like they don't have any cultural impact. And then because Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, all that shit are all in the public domain, you could make a million of those movies. You could make Hammer movies, Amicus movies, Asylum movies, Wild Eye movies, whatever. It doesn't matter. But the Gillman is owned by Universal. So while you can do Fishmen, you know, and it's nothing new. There was Fishmen before, you know, going back to myth, and then you have like the Shadow over Innsmouth and shit like that. But it does kind of put the creature in a box, which he's never really been able to get out of that first film. And I feel like the movie is, while it's visually impressive, and I genuinely think, but I think that like, you know, Rico Browning below the water doing the swimming stuff, and he's so graceful, and he's not allowed to wear a breather or goggles in that mask, so he had to hold his breath and then do all of those moves, and he moves like I imagine a fish man would move, you know, like it doesn't feel like someone doing a 1950s creature. It's not a Roger Corman movie, you know, although Creature from the Haunted Sea is an intentional satire of the creature from the Black Lagoon. And then you have Ben Chapman above the water being the creature, and again, he doesn't move like a 50s B movie monster. He's not, you know, he feels more realistic, like the stuff that Jack Pierce had created before that, with, you know, the Mummy and Frankenstein's monster and all that kind of stuff. Like he feels at place in that world that was established by the Universal monsters. But in the same regard, while Dracula, Lugosi's Dracula, Todd Browning's Dracula kicks it off, and then really like Dracula's Daughter is essentially really the last Universal horror movie, because it's in that same continuity. Those two kind of bookend it, and then you have these other movies that kind of exist in pockets within that theme. Creature very much stands on his own in that regard, but you know, it's still one that I revisit a lot because I was lucky enough to see it in 3D one time in an exhumed film show that was hosted by Monster Mania, I think is the name of a horror convention in South Jersey. And it used to be on TV all the time. Like, the reason for the 3D was because of TV. You know, they were trying to give people something to do to go to the movies, and that's where 3D came from. So this was like one where it had that thing, but then it became part of the Classic Monsters package, which is what spawned shows like the Munsters and Famous Monsters magazine, and this resurgence of love and affection for the classic monsters, and it was that package where I discovered these movies in the 1980s. And I even had, like, when Universal put them back out in like 2003, 2004, each one had like a bust. So there was a creature and Bride of Frankenstein and all that kind of stuff. And I still have a few of them, but it was with the DVDs and they were really cool. um I really should have gone off my notes more, but I guess now I've kind of gotten kind of gotten away from all of that. I don't know. I guess it's crazy that this movie's 70 years old because while it does feel outdated, it also feels like Julie Adams looks very modern in this. And even though it's like tame, her bathing suit, like at the time it was scandalous. The fact that that Julie Adams and the creature, as played by Browning and Chapman, are really the things that you remember about this movie. It's him carrying her. It's that shot of her, like, in the bathing suit and him kind of looming over her and stuff like that. That's the shit that comes to my mind right away. It's the idea of the allure of something beautiful and something ugly. And as repelled as she is, there is also a sense of a bizarre animalistic attraction to it, and that's always the thing that I always looked at with the monsters. Is like, I'm ugly as fuck, man, but like I could be kind of cool sometimes too, and like so can some of the monsters, all the monsters really. And it's like, if people could just see past this, that you have a lot more to offer. And I don't know what he's gonna do when he takes her from the Rita down to his chateau in the Black Lagoon. But that's what I liked about The Shape of Water. It's like, okay, we're gonna explore that attraction, that sexual element of what if someone gave themselves over to the weird and the animalistic of it all. I also love the ending, like why I didn't really care for the sequels as much, because the creature is an animal. He's never experienced humans before, probably, but he also knows that, like, if they take him alive, more of them are going to show up. So he has to die, and he goes back to his Black Lagoon. He sinks there, and I think that's a cool element too, of just understanding in a built-in animalistic way that humans are the bad guys, and you can have the people who just live in the other two dudes for the boat just kind of show up, like they just know where the fucking Black Lagoon cave is. But like, it's aware, like animals are at the end, or when instinct kicks in. I like that element. I love the idea of this 1950s movie just like having a sense of the natural, while the creature considered unnatural. He's King Kong man sized, but there is something very natural about it. How it hunts, how it stalks, how it hides. That all that shit is the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about this movie. And I'm glad that that younger audiences are still finding these movies. And yeah, I talked to a kid at work here, and he's like, oh yeah, Lord of the Rings is too old for me. I can't look at movies that look like that anymore. That makes me sad, because like that movie has a perfect marriage of CGI and miniatures and makeup effects and creature suits and stop motion and blue screen and green screen and all that kind of stuff all together. For now that people are like, oh, it looks so fake. And it's just like, it's a fantasy world, but I still find that there are younger people who, younger friends of mine who's younger kids, they love the monsters. They love Frankenstein's monster. They love the Mummy, and Dracula and all that kind of stuff. And there's been a million iterations of them over the years, but the creature definitely is one of those ones that, when you see it, it doesn't have the same gothic romantic vibe as Dracula, and it doesn't feel the same as it doesn't feel the same as any of them really, but it has its own voice, and it's very short. I'm rewatching it, I forgot just how short it was. And again, the characters that are outside of the creature, and the woman, the look of the entire thing. I like the score too, even with the music sting that kind of da, 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 like hits you every like way too often in the movie, but it brings back a sensory memory for me because I watch these movies, all of them. The Invisible Man, and going back to even like Cheney with the the Phantom of the Opera, and the Hunchback of Notre Dame, and the Wolfman is another one that I absolutely love. And Bride, I think, is the finest of all of them. But there's something very special and different and unique and very 1950s about the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and again, it takes it seriously, and it treats its world like a real world, and it ties itself to religion, it ties itself to science in a way that you didn't really see other than Bride of Frankenstein. They made them they made them cut out the line about the Bible stories being fairy tales, or even in the first Frankenstein where he's like, now I know what it is to be God. They made them like change that line and stuff because of censorship at the time. But this movie feels, while being King Kongish, in line with those other ones, but unique in its own way, and not dealing with curses and the supernatural and all that kind of stuff. And the 3D is pretty cool too if you ever get a chance to see it in its real 3D. Yeah, I don't know. I gush about this movie because it is one of those ones that shaped my love for monster movies. From the very, very first time. This was the first, like, you see clips of Dracula and Frankenstein and the Mummy and all that and stuff, and I grew up in the era of Freddy and Jason and Michael and Leatherface and the Tall Man and all that kind of stuff. So like all that stuff was the same, but like aunts and uncles and grandparents who didn't know if I could handle that shit were like, okay, well, he likes horror, we could show him this, So while I'd seen clips of the other ones, the very first one that I ever sat down and watched soup to nuts was Creature from the Black Lagoon, and just falling in love with the look of it, and the monster, and the relationship between the monster and the girl, and again, like I said, growing up, even as a little kid, being super self-aware of what I looked like, and that kids called me ugly on the playground, and I was short and stuff like that, you automatically associate yourself with the monsters. I subliminally just connected with the creature. I subliminally connected with with Frankenstein's monster, and just going like, I didn't ask to look like this. I'm 42 now. I didn't ask to look like this. If I had the money, I would change it, or the Wolfman and stuff like that. Like the idea of, you're cursed, but once a month you're free to become unfiltered. You're free to become what is inside of all of us, And again, I said in another video, I'll get real for a second here. I was sexually abused as a child by an older man when I was really little. And one of the coping mechanisms that I had was that the monsters would come and protect me. And yeah, so that was another reason why, these movies had a special connection to me, was that, something scary can be something good, didn't expect that. Probably shouldn't have gotten into that story again. But, I'm always going to be in love with these things. I have the mask above my fridge at home. I have a Wolfman pillow in my living room. I've got stacks of Famous Monsters magazines and mini busts of these things and stuff like that. They're always going to be important to me. They're always going to be special. And I hope that the creature is around for another 70 years, if not more. I'll be dead already, but it'd be nice if it was. And I don't know if anybody from the original cast is still alive now, but this is a special one for me. This is just one of those movies that I saw as a little kid and was just, I got it, and then I started drawing pictures of the Creature from the Black Lagoon and Frankenstein's monster and all that kind of shit, and you know, growing up into wanting to tell stories, and you know, reading Mary Shelley, and reading you know, H.G. Wells, and reading Stoker, and you know, all that stuff, and just like being in love with the gothic romance of it all, but also kind of with this one, the, you know, going back to the travelogue idea, going into the kind of the pulp with this one a little bit. And we talked about in the Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom video, where this is where that one is kind of the closest to like Doc Savage, and this kind of has that feel as well. This is kind of like, it's horror by way of adventure, by way of kind of science fiction, because you do have this like creature, but I don't know, it marries just a lot of cool things together, and it's the last great Universal monster movie, and I don't know if anybody will ever be able to remake it in a way that will have the same impact. Whereas Dracula, Frankenstein, the Mummy, all those, you can do different shades of gray with them, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like if they're going to remake this, it's going to be about like, there's a, you know, a not Elon Musk spilled chemicals in the Amazon or something like that, or well, I guess Bezos in that regard, or it would be like, you know, I think Carpenter wanted to do like fishmen that lived in pyramids below the Amazonian like waters and stuff like that. I don't know. I feel like everybody, and even the look, like I said before, they're gonna overcomplicate it. I feel like, you know, it was Del Toro did it perfectly. He's like, look, he's a fish man from the Amazon. They worship him as a god there, and he falls in love with a woman, and she falls in love back with him, and there you go. That's it. You know. So that's it. 70 years. The Creature from the Black Lagoon. Tell me what your favorite Universal monster movie is, or what movie anniversaries you're looking forward to that are coming up this year. I know like Ghostbusters and Gremlins and all that kind of stuff is coming up, so I'm really excited to talk more about all that. But when I was going through the calendar and I saw this one was coming up, I was like, all right, when am I going to have an excuse to talk about Creature from the Black Lagoon, and wax poetic about it? And I know that when I go back and I rewatch this, I'm going to forget 50 fucking million things I wanted to talk about. And I was like, well, I could do the trivia stuff, but then people are going to go, oh, you read that off Wikipedia. I was like, no. I used to read Famous Monsters magazine and watch late night horror hosts, and this dumb bullshit just sticks into my gray matter because I'm a loser. All right, guys, have a good one.